Welcome, everybody, to Crypto Talk with Brianna and Scott. I'm Scott for today. Brianna, how are you doing? Brianna's frozen. Oh my gosh. Brianna is frozen. Hold on. Are you there? I can hear you. Are you there? But you are frozen. Hold on. Oh my gosh. Hold on.
Okay, here I come. I think I'm coming in.
There you are. You're coming in slow. Okay, there you are. Wow.
Okay.
We had a major internet glitch, I guess. How you doing?
Yeah. I really enjoyed that song that you put on there today. I'm glad you brought that upbeat music because I needed it. I'll be completely honest.
Yeah.
And I like that song. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm good. I had a really great week. It was full of
Great.
just creating and being very inspired and kind of a lot of momentum going into really positive directions. And then yesterday hit, and I found myself, and I'm still flustered. And we'll get into all of this as we discuss this in our show. But man, the energy when these people in their business suits come in and try to control everything, it really just throws me off. It threw me off my little creative path there for a moment, and I'm just frustrated. So, but we'll get into all of it and the reasons why. How are you? How are you, Scott?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm confused about it too. And we're going to talk today probably a lot about this new SEC. I want to call it a ban, but it's not a ban. It's just a ruling from the SEC that on Kraken, and it's going to cause a lot of ripples, I think, through crypto space on staking, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. But yeah, it's got me confused because I can see both sides. So I'm not totally upset. I don't know what's going to happen, and so hopefully we can tease out some of that today of what might happen or what we think might happen. And hopefully if anybody's on here joining, please pipe in. We would love to hear anyone's comments on this SEC ruling and Kraken and staking and the whole situation and what it might mean for crypto as a whole, or anything else you guys want to talk about. But please, chime in because we would like to hear some opinions. And right now, I have more questions than anything, but we'll get into it. But there were some other things I wanted to talk about. Actually, I'm just going to launch into a couple things first that I'm like, oh, these are fun things. So let's just hit a couple of fun things here first. So let me share no, that's you. Where am I at? There I am. So, this is pretty cool stuff. Paris Hilton to launch metaverse dating experience in the sandbox. How cool is that, huh? Paris Hilton, look at her there. Now, what I find interesting about this is that this in the sandbox, I am not a fan of the sandbox. It is just too blocky and I want some 3D. But anyways,
we don't want 2D dating. We want 3D dating.
We want 3D dating, right? I mean, come on. I want this little blocky 2D dating thing. Anyways, I think that's funny. Paris Hilton. What else? I had one other thing in here that was kind of interesting. Oh, yeah, here's one. So have you heard about this whole new NFT? You can create NFTs on Bitcoin now?
I have not.
Oh, yeah, this is a big deal.
Yeah,
well, it's interesting deal, again. Oh, boy, we'll probably have to wait till next show to talk about it more because it's quite interesting, the technology behind it, because it's they call them ordinals, and they are a part of the Bitcoin blockchain. And they found this, basically, there are these little pocket parts of a block, I guess, that can contain data. And so basically you just kind of stuff an NFT or anything pointing to this little piece of data in a blockchain. And but what's cool about it is that it divides up, it takes a Satoshi. So each Bitcoin can be divided up into 100 million Satoshis. And it takes a Satoshi and takes that record and can put in data. And so people are putting NFTs in there. And the cool thing about it is that unlike Ethereum, which most of the time, a lot of the NFTs are not actually they're not actually in the blockchain. They're actually, there's the records that say you own it, but then the actual art piece or music or whatever is actually off the blockchain. And so with these Bitcoin type NFTs, the actual NFT, the data is actually in the blockchain, which we know then is immutable and lasts forever. And so it's a little bit different. And so, but this article says, so this has been around for, I don't know, less than a year, maybe only a couple of months it started to be talked about. But now people are putting in all, punks. So people are paying now, they're redoing punks on the Bitcoin blockchain. And so guys are paying millions of dollars now for new punks that are on the Bitcoin blockchain. My question is, and I don't know this, is are these the same punks? Are they different punks? Or, I mean, what are they? All I know is that it's starting this NFT craze all over again. And there are the critics of true Bitcoin maxis are like, hey, we don't want this NFT stuff clogging up our network. This is for financial transactions only. We don't want all this crazy NFT stuff messing around with our network, which I think is hilarious. And in a lot of ways, it's actually good for the network to have more consistent traffic. Anyways, that's kind of a big deal. We'll talk more about that later, but they're called ordinals. So if you hear that name, that's what that's about.
Ordinals, all the names. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah. Well, that's the crazy thing about crypto is there are names for everything. Weird, and they're weird. Like cryptocurrency. That's a terrible name. Implies that every token, everything is a currency. And as we know, there's very few currencies. I mean, Bitcoin, even though it is a currency, we don't even use it as a currency. We use it as a bar of gold, basically a digital piece of gold. But it was created as a currency. And XRP might be a currency. I don't even know if XRP is, but there's a few of them. But everything else, Ethereum, Cardano, Polygon, those aren't currencies. I don't know. Interesting. Off on the tangent. Okay, so let's get into it. Let me play a video of Gary Gensler basically saying what happened. If I can find I had like a whole page of my notes that I was taking here. Notes, where'd you go? Notes. Okay, here. Oh, maybe you're down here. There we go. All right, so.
I'm so fat. Brendan, you're not fat. It's the shirt.
This is a great commercial.
Look at Nate. His
sorry. Okay, here we go.
It's going to be forced now to end its crypto staking
Can you hear
program
it?
in the U.S. and pay
Yep,
a $30 million fine to settle charges from the SEC. The agency said Kraken had failed to register the program whereby investors earn a yield in return for locking up their tokens and allowing them to be used to facilitate transactions on the blockchain. It's the SEC's first crackdown on staking. And joining us right now is SEC Chair Gary Gensler. We should say Bitcoin and pretty much all the cryptocurrencies are down on the back of this news. Chair Gensler, it's great to see you this morning. There's a phrase online where they say, tell it to me like I'm 5. So for those who are uninitiated into what happened here, tell it to me like I'm 5. What was Kraken doing and what was the problem that you were trying to solve?
Andrew, what Kraken was doing was asking the American public for their coins, crypto tokens, and saying, I'll give you a return, 4% to 21% returns. And the problem was they were not disclosing to the investing public the risks that the investing public was entering into. And we have a basic bargain in the United States since the 1930s. You can take whatever risks you want. Companies like Kraken can offer investment contracts and investment schemes, but they have to have full, fair, and truthful disclosure. And this puts the investors who watch your program in a better position. That's our basic bargain. They were not complying with that basic law.
So how does this, though, differ, for example, from some of the other firms out there, including Coinbase, who offer yield products?
Whether you call it, the labels don't matter. Long ago, Supreme Court Justice Marshall said this so eloquently. It's not about the labels, it's about the underlying economics. And this really should put everyone on notice in this marketplace, whether you call it lend, whether you call it earn, whether you call it yield, whether you offer what's called an annual percentage yield, APY, that doesn't matter. If somebody's taking their tokens and transferring it to that platform, the platform controls it. And guess what happens if they go bankrupt? You stand in line at the bankruptcy court. There's a saying in crypto that says, not your keys, not your coins. So those other platforms should take note of this and seek to come into compliance, do the proper disclosures and registration and the like.
Okay, so but here's one of the big issues, as I think you know, which is this staking service is going to no longer be available to customers in the U.S. But interestingly, they're going to still offer the same product internationally, abroad, outside of the United States. And so it raises this larger policy question as to whether crypto, these types of products just move offshore. Maybe that's what you want, and that's a good thing. But then whether what you do about the American citizenry who's then using VPNs and all sorts of other things to skirt around what's happening here.
Look, we're technology neutral at the SEC, but we're clearly very focused on investor protection. 330 million Americans are our clients. These firms, Kraken knew how to register, others know how to register. It's just a form on our website. They can come in, talk to our talented people in disclosure review teams, and if they want to offer staking, we're neutral. Come in, register, because investors need that disclosure. What are you doing with the tokens? Are you trading against the tokens? Are you borrowing against the token? Are you using them for your own purposes? And we've seen this in the crypto field. So investors not only need that disclosure, but it's the law.
All right, I'm going to be straight up.
Okay. We lost Brianna again. All right, you're back.
Okay, I am back.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on. I don't have very good connection today.
Well,
so
it's either Gary Gensler is messing with the internet now, or it's a Chinese spy balloon.
yeah, it's probably the balloon. I think it's the balloon.
Yeah. Okay, so we heard it from the horse's mouth right there. So many things to think about there, but I'll give you first crack. What is your opinion of it, or do you want to just launch into some articles? I know you've got something from Brian Armstrong from Coinbase that you want to share, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, and I will share that. I think, I have a really hard time with Gary Gensler, and he answered the questions up front. It appeared in the interview. I watched a 20-minute one that was on Yahoo, and I don't know who was interviewing him, but he talks about transparency and how that needs to be provided. And he calls centralized exchanges casinos, which just irks me. It just irks me because he said it probably 5 times in this interview. Wow. And along with the statement of their role is to protect retail investors. And I just think they're painting the wrong picture. And so my question comes down to with this, is it that they're failing to see, they just really are failing to see and have any sort of open mind, and be able to try to work together and have some sort of, rather than having this total authority figure that just trumps on everything, which is kind of how I felt like that went down yesterday. Or is it welcomed? I think this is setting the tone, and he's really setting the tone with his statements since this has all happened as to how this year is going to play out and how the other exchanges need to be on their toes. And, it just, one of the questions that
Oh, come on in. Come on. Chinese balloon, go away. Bring Brianna back. she's hanging in there. I don't know. Well, I'm going to comment on some of that. So, yeah, I mean, I agree. It's so interesting. I go back and forth, though, I have to tell you, because I do think that after the year that we've all suffered through, that we can all agree that some form of regulation, something has to be done to protect people from what happened with FTX and really all these other CeFi type of businesses that were using crypto, and a lot of that was because there was no regulation, so people came in and did bad things necessarily. So so there has to be something, and there's going to be. I mean, whether it has to be or not, it's coming. Regulation is coming. Now, I didn't see this coming though on the staking. This caught me by surprise. But as I thought about it, it kind of makes sense, because what he's basically saying is that, what the SEC is saying is that no matter what you're doing, if you're earning a yield, if customers are earning a yield, then this needs to be regulated like a security. And so, but I didn't see it this way with staking, because as most of us understand in crypto, we understand the networks. We understand what crypto is based on. It's based on the blockchain. Proof of stake, that's how the network runs, right? It runs on these validators, and people put up their ETH, their 32 ETH or whatever, to become a validator on the network. And what has happened, though, which makes sense in a market, right, is that because not everybody has 32 ETH they can put up, or they want to become a validator and have the software on their computer and run a validator node, there are these pools. And so Kraken and Coinbase and many, many others basically said, look, we'll become the validator, but you can go ahead and put in any amount of money you want, or amount of ETH or whatever, contribute to this, we'll pool it all together, and then we'll become the validator, and we will share the reward, because validators earn a reward for securing the network and running the network. That's how blockchains work. So we all understand that this just, at least to me, it just made perfect sense that, yeah, this is just another option. What's the big deal? Instead of me having to put up 32 ETH, I can put up, $100 of ETH, aggregate it into this, and they'll share the rewards with me, and I'll earn 2, 3, 4%. But what Gary Gensler is saying is that if you're earning a percentage off of somebody else's work, and that's the key thing here, and I've got some descriptions about the Howey test and about how the stock market is evaluated, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But basically what they're saying, and this is the interesting part, is that if you hand over your money and you invest your money in an entity, and that entity then goes to work to try to create value and work, and from that they give you a percentage, a yield, that's security, and that needs to be registered. Now I'm just going to throw this out here. What they're saying, they're not saying that you can't stake, that staking isn't good, bad, or indifferent. They don't care. They're just saying, if you are going to do this and provide a percentage to people, you have to register with us and disclose how you're going to be using all of the tokens and all the assets that customers provide to you. Now that in itself is not a bad thing. And so this is where I go back and forth. So we can start to tease this out a little bit, especially, I'm interested to hear what Brian Armstrong says, because I also see as a player in this industry that understands the realities of regulation and running a business. And so, but in general, I don't think he's in favor of it. So I'm interested to kind of see that and talk about it, because if I'm an investor, I want to be protected. And for me, I think a basic tenet of all free people is transparency. Transparency to me is I want to know what everyone's doing with my money. And so even though I was okay to turn my money over to these companies that are staking on my behalf, because I pretty much understand it, but I spend a lot of time in crypto. The average person probably doesn't. So I'm okay with information. But the question is that all this is? I don't know what it takes to file one of these SEC clarifications or whatever. And my guess is that it's going to, think about it. When a company goes on the New York Stock Exchange and they want to offer stock, they usually hire a whole team of lawyers and investment bankers to do this. It costs millions of dollars to put this together and to become then offering a stock. So there's probably a lot of stuff that has to go on. And so that is going to cost people in the industry money. So they don't want to do it. I get that. But overall, if this is just protecting us and providing more information on what happens, then I'm kind of for it. But that caveat is I don't really know what that entails. And it could be really hard, could be bad. I don't know. What he didn't say is, he didn't say anything about, well, we're going to review your application and we'll be able to decide whether you can even offer this or not. He didn't say that. But is that an option? Is there, once you disclose this and you fill this thing out on the website, he made it sound so simple. It's like, yeah, it's just a form on our website. You fill it out. What's the big deal, guys? Well, it's got to be more than that. So many questions I have. So.
Right. And we'll go over to that in just 1 second. I just wanted to point out really quick to kind of top that off that we're going to get into Hester Pierce, because she is part of the SEC. She's a commissioner, and she did make some statements. But one of the things that she put out yesterday was, or maybe it was today, that the SEC did not attempt to consult with the crypto industry before launching this week's unregistered security crackdown on staking as a service. So that's kind of interesting. And she's really not okay with the way this all played out. The other thing, too, is that within the terms of the settlement, that Kraken has now vowed to never relaunch its staking business for U.S. customers. And what she says, meaning it can never even go through the motions of operating above board in the SEC's view if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So
what's that all about? I don't understand. I saw that too. And it's like, well, why is that the case? Why can't they come back and offer it? And is this just the slap on the wrist, the like, you're the bad boys? And this is what I have a problem with. No matter what the policy is, the way he's handling this is just terrible. It has been from the beginning. And he just picks people out. I've always said he's basically just whoever he can get in the sights of his gun, he just finds somebody and pulls the trigger to make them an example, instead of having rules that are clearly put out there. Now, I will say this, because what his argument is we already have rules. They're right here. Every other security, every other entity that offers a yield or interest rates has to do this. You have to do this too. What I find interesting about that is that I don't know if what the policy was like maybe 5 years ago or 6 or 7, when crypto started getting some momentum. I'm sure that all the agencies before Gensler was there, what were the first statements? Because when I got into crypto a couple years ago, and started really looking into this, it just appeared that the crypto industry, their stance was crypto is different than traditional finance. Therefore, you cannot apply the same rules in traditional finance to crypto. And what crypto has always wanted is, let's get together and figure out what these new rules are, and then let's put those rules in place and let's move on. And as far as I know, at least since Gensler's been there, it's like, no, we're not going to do that. These are the rules. Follow them. And yet, I don't understand. Was it because he couldn't enforce it, or he needed legislation from the Congress, or what? Because even though he said this, nothing happened. Like, there was no regulations put out. There was no. All he said was, "Here's the rules. You need to come in and do it." And then people didn't. And so I guess he probably has limited authority in a way where he couldn't just mandate it to everybody, which, seems like if he had the power, that's what he would have done, and shut everyone down and say, look, until you file your paperwork, you're out of business. I guess he couldn't do that, or I don't know. So that always confused me. It's like, why was the industry allowed to just go unregulated and unchecked, and why was it allowed to be the wild, wild west? Because people have been burned. I mean, bad people have come into the space, and my take on that is the reason that Sam Bankman-Fried and lots of those other CeFi companies came in, these were traditional finance guys that I think saw an opportunity to do bad things in the crypto space because it was unregulated. They figured, we can get away with some shit here that we can't get away with in the traditional finance. Let's go here and cause some fraud. And to me, I put that on regulators and congressmen because they allowed it to happen. And as you and I know, that had nothing to do with the basis of blockchain, cryptocurrencies, DeFi, which it's all working great. These were just bad actors taking advantage of loopholes that the SEC and Congress left open. And so when people say, commentators, even congressmen, or even Gary Gensler, that crypto's bad, crypto's unregulated, crypto's a dangerous place, that's just so irresponsible, because it's just not true. And that to me is the thing that bugs me the most, is when people say that and they don't understand that these are bad people. And that because there were these huge loopholes, not because you and I as investors or crypto believers or any of the great people that are creating crypto products, we didn't cause this problem. So that's what frustrates me. But go ahead, let's look at what Brian Armstrong says.
Yeah, many, many questions. And I think what would be really, really nice is to just have, why can't we just have Gary Gensler with some of these people in the crypto community and have the conversation that's public and get to the bottom of some of these questions? It'd be really, really refreshing. But yeah. Okay, so am I freezing? Yep. Am I good to go?
You're good now. Keep it going.
Okay. All righty. So here we have Brian Armstrong. So things moved very quickly because 2 days ago, on Wednesday, February 8th, Brian, the CEO of Coinbase, he sounded the alarm and addressed rumors that the SEC plans to eliminate cryptocurrency staking for retail investors in the US. Armstrong insisted that staking is not a security and that the trend allows users to participate directly in running open crypto networks. And he shared on Twitter, and I quote, "I hope that's not the case, as I believe it would be a terrible path for the US if that were allowed to happen." And he stressed that crypto is not a security, adding that, quote, "Staking is a really important innovation. In crypto, it allows users to participate directly in open crypto networks. Staking brings many positive improvements into the space, including scalability, increased security, and reduced carbon footprint." And what his views are that new technologies need to be fostered, not stifled in the United States. So then we fast forward. Sorry, I have multiple screens going here. Then we fast forward to 12 hours later, about roughly 12 hours later. So things happen very quickly. Mm-hmm. And now we have what we just spoke about, Kraken to shut down US crypto staking services and to pay $30 million in fines in the SEC settlement. And they were told to immediately end its crypto staking as a service platform directly after there was a article released. It was directly after the statement was released. They were told that they immediately needed to take down their services for staking. So the SEC filed its lawsuit in federal court on yesterday, and behind closed doors. And as far as I know, Kraken did not make a statement as to whether or not things were a security or not. Kraken's website offered a 20% yield on its staking service. The SEC press release suggested it may be as high as 21%. That gives me, well, we'll get to it later on, maybe the why. But the SEC's characterization of Kraken's staking setup highlighted the risks investors take on when staking their tokens with staking as a service providers, which give them very little protection. And then it goes into the process of staking, which you already kind of explained, but I can go ahead and point out here again. It's the process by which proof of stake blockchain networks like Ethereum maintain their security. The network's decentralized validators post crypto as a form of collateral to attest that they will stay honest. In return for processing transactions, they get rewarded with more tokens. Many crypto stakers loan their tokens to service providers who run the nodes and share in their returns. And then we have here a statement by Gary Gensler: whether it's through staking as a service, lending, or other means, crypto intermediaries, when offering investment contracts in exchange for investors' tokens, need to provide the proper disclosures and safeguards required by our securities law. Today's action should make clear to the marketplace that staking as a service providers must register and provide full, fair, and truthful disclosure and investor protection. And that raises another question to me, because I know he's talked about the risks that need to be disclosed. And so I'm wondering, I know that Kraken didn't register, but that's where I get lost as well.
We'll form that question again, because I think I can answer, or at least give my opinion.
As far as how Kraken did not provide the risks being asked for, is it just that they didn't register?
Yeah, they didn't register. So what the SEC says is that when you register with the SEC as a security, then part of that process, and this is what I think takes a long time, is that you have to outline everything that an investor can look at that and say, oh, here's the risks and rewards of what we're doing. So by not filing, you're not disclosing the risks, basically. That's what he's saying. And that's what they're saying about every token, about anything that earns a yield. And this, it kind of became more clear to me as I was researching this today, because, I've been kind of following this for a while off and on and trying to kind of dive into the details of, what is it? What's the crux of the issue here? Why is the crypto space saying, no, we don't want to be regulated the same way. Our stuff is different. And I also always wanted to know what the SEC is, what their stance is. And so I've done some research on that. And actually, I'll just share that now, because it goes right to that question. So this is, first, let's see what Petya, our friend Petya is on, and I got to put hers up there. You guys are incredible. She's sending us love. So we are golden here. We've got Petya's love. We've got all our kings. Hopefully you guys, anybody else watching, pop in, say hi, and then also just, let us know what you want to talk about, or your opinions on this, because I know y'all have some. So what they're saying is, let me share this, and then we'll come back to you. But I think this is interesting for people to understand. I don't fully understand it, but let's see if we can parse it out here. I think this is actually fascinating in a way. So, and the other thing I'll just mention, I watched Charles Hoskins yesterday, who has a video out that he commented. I would suggest anybody who's interested in this watch his video. It actually had some really good stuff. He's a smart cookie, very eloquent, and had his own opinions. And I will just say that he's kind of saying, that he agrees with this concept, and that, of course, the reason he does is that he's saying that Cardano, where he's the creator and founder, one of them, is different than Ethereum and some of these other blockchains. And in a way, he was basically saying, hey, yeah, maybe ETH and some of these other blockchains should be considered a security, but Cardano should not be. And I don't know the details, and we can talk about that more, but I think that's the next interesting little rabbit hole that we can go down at some point, because that's fascinating. But he has all these technical reasons that why some blockchains should be securities and some should not be. Fascinating. But here's what the Security Exchange. So I just looked up and Googled what they consider an investment. And so it says an investment contract exists when there is an investment of money in a common enterprise with a reasonable expectations of profits to be derived from the efforts of others. So this is the so-called Howey test, and it applies to any contract, scheme, or transaction, regardless of whether it has any of the characteristics of typical securities. Now that's a little bit of mumbo jumbo, but the way I see this is that what they're saying is that if there's any, contract, and that's loosely termed, right? That's any time that two parties get together and agree, I will give you this, and in return, you'll give me this, and I'll give you this, kind of a situation, right? So they're saying that anytime that happens, the crux of the Howey test, and what this was, off the top of my head, I don't have it detailed here, is that back in the either 30s or 50s, when there was a lawsuit against a farmer, an orange farmer who was farming oranges, and he basically wanted to divide up his orchard, and he would have people invest in the orchard, and they would, I think his idea was that they would, he told them that they were going to, help him manage the farm. But what it turned out to be is that they didn't do any of the work, and it just was like a traditional investment. They gave him money so he could run the farm, and they got a portion of the proceeds, basically. And that was before a lot of these rules were in place, and the government came in and said, look, they're not doing the work. You're doing the work, and then you're paying them because they gave you an investment. This is an investment just like a stock. And so he didn't want to register this investment situation as a stock, and that is the ruling. And so this is called the Howey test. And so anytime this is in question, the key issue is if somebody gives you money and in expectation for a return, but they're not doing any of the work, this other entity is doing the work and then giving you the return, that's a security. That's the key issue here. So when you look at tokens, or even look at this situation here, where if I'm going to be add to the staking, be a pool of investors. So let's say you put in some, I put in some, and we put it into this pool and we give it to Kraken or Coinbase or whatever. They take all of our assets. They then create the validator node and say, look, we'll share the rewards with you. And then they give us a percentage. Well, we're not doing any of the work. All we're doing is giving our money to them, and they're doing the work, if you will, right? They're putting up the node and they're paying us a return. That is what the SEC is saying. That's a security. And if it is a security, then whoever is providing that service has to register with the SEC and provide all the detail about how it works and about how the return or yield will be presented back to the investor. So I don't know if that helps anybody out, but to me that kind of clarifies the situation here. And when you look at it just like that, just like I explained, it is a security and it should be registered. So does that clear up anything for you?
Yeah, that was a great explanation. I'm glad you went through that.
Now, the question I still have of that then, though, is one, what does this filing, what is it? Wow, should it be as simple as Kraken or Coinbase or all these companies to just go on the website, download a little form, fill it out, send it in, and be done with it? Well, I have a feeling it's not that. It's much, much bigger than that. And if it was that simple, then smart people would know that, and we'd have done it already. So there's something that we all don't know about that the average person doesn't really understand about this SEC filing. Wouldn't you agree? Doesn't that make sense?
I absolutely agree. And when that direct question, and pretty much in other words, but exactly what you said, is asked to Gary Gensler, we don't get a direct answer. It's just the regulations are there. He uses that same phrase, but what is the disconnect? And that's where I just wish we could have this conversation in public directly between, forget the person in the middle interviewing. It's that's where the frustrations come in, because there just never seems to be the answers that were like just a straight up answer for some of the key questions. There's something there, and the interviewers ask it, but it's still there. It still goes unanswered. So,
so that is true, and that maybe that will happen. I doubt it, because we've been asking for this for a long time. We've been asking for clarity. So pull up Brian Armstrong's or comments again, or read them again. They're not very lengthy, but I had some points to make on his thing, on his points there.
So I'll read his comments, and then after your words about them, then we can go on to Hester.
Okay.
Hester Pierce's comments, who's part of the SEC. So Brian Armstrong said, staking is not a security, and that the trend allows users to participate directly in running open crypto networks.
Okay, so stop there. Let me comment on that. So I find that interesting, and this is the thing. I don't have a hard and fast opinion on this one way or the other, because there's too many questions. But I have a general sense of this could be a good thing, but I don't know all the details of it. So one of the things is that, okay, he says the staking's not a security. Well, in what I just read, it seems like it is, or could be. It could be considered that. So I'll just say this. It's in his best interest not to have regulations as much as, for him. So I can see why he would say this, but I just don't necessarily believe that's true, that it isn't a security. I don't know necessarily, but I don't fully agree with him. Now, what I do agree with, which is interesting, and he's taking the concept of, like I explained, the proof of staking is a part of how blockchains work. And the staking as a whole is great. And in fact, I think in that interview he even said, if not, I know I read it somewhere, Gary Gensler said, they don't have a problem with staking. That's fine. And in fact, they don't have a problem with earning yields and even with tokens. They're just saying, look, you've got to register them, and you're not doing that. So when you break it down like that, I can't blame him in a way, and there's lots of things we can, but give us more information or whatever. But, and like I said, I think he makes it sound very simple. I'm sure it's not. And if it was, people would do it. So there's that. But staking is part of it. And Gary Gensler doesn't have a problem with the staking. In fact, this is another question I have, and I had it written down here somewhere, but he's talking about, well, again, it wasn't clear in that interview, but it's this pooled staking. So like I described, where I put some in, you put some in, and the way that most of these exchanges offer that to retail investors, it's pooled staking. He's not saying, now, if you or I want to become a full validator, we can, and I don't know how it's done, but I actually did some research. There are websites, there are companies that do that, and they will, with their help, become a full validator, and you get your staking. You have the 32, you put your 32 ETH in, or if it's Ethereum, and you become a validator, and you get rewards for that. That is not what Gary Gensler is talking about. Now, I say that with some sort of certainty, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an expert in this, but that's my firm belief, is that that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about these exchanges offering fractional staking. So I just want to make sure that's clear. Let's all get that clear. We're not talking about getting rid of staking as part of, a consensus mechanism for a blockchain. We're talking about this pool, which that is the thing that earns this interest. And the SEC's, their job is to look out for retail investors, make sure that we understand the risks. And what he's saying is, we don't know the risks because you haven't disclosed them. So that's my take on that. So go ahead. What else did he say?
He said that he hopes that it's not the case, as I believe it would be a terrible path for the U.S. if that were allowed to happen. Again, stressing that crypto is not a security, and adding that staking is a really important innovation in crypto. It allows users to participate directly in open crypto networks. Staking brings many positive improvements into the space, including scalability, increased security, and reduced carbon footprint. And then adding that new technologies need to be fostered, not stifled in the U.S.
Okay. So putting that one aside because I have comment on that. But he's being a little bit ingenuous. He's being a little vague and confusing there because, I mean, we all know that. We all know that staking is a major part of the network. Gary Gensler understands that. I don't think he's talking about that part. I'm almost certain he's not talking about that part. And so Brian Armstrong is being cheeky there. He knows the difference, but he has a vested interest here. He doesn't want any regulation. I mean, I don't know. He says he wants some sort of regulation, but he should know better than that. He knows Gary Gensler's not talking about the staking of the network. So I find that a little, I'm not sure I agree with the way he said that. Now, the last statement, I already forgot. What was the last part? The very last part.
That new technologies need to be fostered, not stifled.
Yeah. So I think that really is the crux of what the crypto industry as a whole is. That's their argument. It's their argument, but it also doesn't hold a lot of credibility for me anymore. There's a yes and no. Okay, let's just assume that this registration process is a big deal, pretty big deal. Because if it wasn't, people would be doing it. So I don't know. I'll have to look into it maybe and see what does it really take. But I just know from knowing how businesses that want to register as stocks in traditional finance, it's expensive. They go through a lot. It's a whole process. So, but it's good. That's a good thing because that protects us. And so I think that's a good thing. Now, what crypto is saying is that if you push this on crypto, you're going to, most small individual developers that come up with a great idea, and we know that this is open source software. So it's really simple. Well, if you're a coder or developer, to go grab some open source blockchain protocol, put it on your computer, copy it over there, and then make some tweaks to it, come up with some new ideas, and come up with a new blockchain or a new technology or a new something on the blockchain. And there may be just one or two people involved in that. And if they have to go through this process, they won't do it. They won't be able to do it. They won't do it. Now, that is what they're talking about, stifling innovation. That's one of them, I would think. And so I would think that's true. It will stifle some of that. But here's the thing. What it will probably do is force new technologies to then, before they're actually going to put stuff out on the network, to hire a team and have enough money and get VC investing and hire developers, hire lawyers, hire people to, vet this whole thing and then propose it to the SEC if it can be a security or whatever, before it actually gets put out there for us to use. Now, this is also a good thing, in my opinion, because as a user, as an investor, especially in DeFi, I'm frustrated with the crappy code out there that gets hacked all the time. And I don't know if this would fix the problem, but I think it would help if it takes longer and more money, if you will, to put out a new project in crypto. I think that's a good thing for the traditional investor or for the investor. That's not what crypto wants to hear, but crypto is just making this lots of little complicated issues and just rounding it off and saying, hey, don't regulate us because it will stifle innovation. And we want to, lead the US. We should lead in technology and innovation. So don't make it harder on us. That's what they're basically saying. What do you think about that? You can disagree completely because it's like a lot of crypto people don't.
I think there's a number of voices, and I think that's one of them, the don't regulate. And I think there's also there is this question that's ongoing, will we have tailor-made? This doesn't quite fit into traditional finance. And some of these older laws, is there a way to be able to kind of merge and develop new? And I think that if we had somebody who was really in it for the right reasons, who, if we had whether it be Brian Armstrong or whoever, not him particularly, but we've talked about him a lot, so I'm using him as an example.
Sure.
To be able to help shape without having, obviously he has his whole thing going with Coinbase. So, but just putting that aside for a moment. So not using somebody from traditional finance to make these rules, and kind of like, can we get around the annoying part of traditional finance? And that's, again, that's like you pointed out, that's where the frustration comes in. And I think that that's still where the frustration comes in, is when you see Gary Gensler and he's being interviewed and he's talking about how you have to be able to bring forth transparency, which I agree, absolutely, bring forth the transparency. But then when his questions are asked, he won't answer them, right. And it's like, it's just so frustrating. And I think that's where the hang up is every time. It's not working hand in hand. We got one underneath the other, and one of them is not being transparent, but is expecting the transparency, and it just doesn't flow. And I think that's really what I see as being, like, for me, that's my problem. I'm sure there's people who agree with that, but there's all different perspectives all over the board.
Yeah.
And
no, I think I like that view. That's a total valid view, that there could be, and probably should be. I would vote for this. Yeah, let's get together and create, something new for this. Yeah, I think that's a valid thing, but yeah, it's interesting, because the part that I'm like, if you look at, when I actually read through what the SEC considers a security, I don't have a problem necessarily with crypto in this case. Let's say this staking, this fractional staking. For a Coinbase to come and register that and say, here's what it is. We're doing this, this, and this, and we're going to give a return. And just basically disclosing that. So I, as an investor, and the SEC, who's, looking out for investors, supposedly, can all look at that. And just, again, transparency should be on both sides. And in a way, Coinbase and Kraken aren't being transparent. Now, they're not, I don't think that they're setting out to like hide things. It's just that there's been no precedence to have to do it before. And, maybe, and I don't think Gary Gensler would go for this, but, in a way, if Kraken and Coinbase were to lay out on their website all the details that might be in that SEC filing, then maybe that would be good enough, because the bottom line is, it's not about Gary Gensler or Brian Armstrong. It's about transparency. It's about me as an investor. I should have the ability to know as much as I can know, right? And if I don't understand how I'm getting this yield, then that's a problem, I think. So this is complicated, because there's all these little nuances, and everybody has got their own agenda, right? I mean, some of those comments Brian Armstrong made they're not. I'm not saying they're not true, but they're just. He knows better. He knows better to try to confuse people with talking about, that this is a part of the blockchain. That's not what Gary Gensler's talking about. He's talking about this fractional side. So everybody's got their agenda about this. So let's talk about the other commissioner, though, which is interesting, because this is a commissioner in the SEC who was not happy with the way this turned out, or was done, I guess.
Yes. So Commissioner Hester M. Pierce, are you able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, I found myself on Twitter, and I don't go on there very often, and every time I regret it. Yeah. But I did find this, but there's, of course, there's people all over the board, but I have to agree with what she's saying. Whether or not her actions align or whatever we want to criticize her for, I have to agree with what she's saying. And so what she said is, today the SEC shut down Kraken's staking program and counted it as a win for investors. I disagree, and therefore dissent. Actually, I'll just read the whole thing. Kraken operated a service through which its customers could offer their tokens up for staking. The customers earned returns, and the company earned a fee. The commission argues that the staking program should have been registered with the SEC as a securities offering. Whether one agrees with this analysis or not, the more fundamental question is whether SEC registration would have been possible. In the current climate, crypto-related offerings are not making it through the SEC's registration pipeline. An offering like the staking service at issue here raises a host of complicated questions, including whether the staking program as a whole would be registered or whether each token staking program would be separately registered, what the important disclosures would be, and what the accounting implications would be for Kraken. We have known about crypto staking programs for a long time. Although it may not have made a difference, I should have called for us to put out guidance on staking long before now. Instead of taking the path of thinking through staking programs and issuing guidance, we again chose to speak through an enforcement action purporting to make clear to the marketplace that staking as a service provider must register and provide full, fair, and truthful disclosure and investor protection. Using enforcement actions to tell people what the law is in an emerging industry is not an efficient or fair way of regulating. I agree with that statement. Moreover, staking services are not uniform. So one-off enforcement actions and cookie cutter analysis does not cut it.
Yep.
Most concerning, though, is that our solution to a registration violation is to shut down entirely a program that has served people well. The program will no longer be available in the United States, and Kraken is enjoined from ever offering a staking service in the United States, registered or not. A paternalistic and lazy regulator settles on a solution like the one in the settlement. Do not initiate a public process to develop a workable registration process that provides valuable information to investors. Just shut it down. More transparency around crypto staking programs like Kraken's might well be a good thing. However, whether we need a uniform regulatory solution, and if that regulatory solution is best provided by a regulator that is hostile to crypto in the form of an enforcement action, is less clear.
I love that. I agree with almost all of that, and it was handled terribly. But here's the thing. I am such a centrist because I see both sides of so many things. And I know a lot of people say, well, that's wishy-washy. And if you listen to this interview, I'll have said things that seem contradictory completely, but I really do see both sides, of this. And part of it, I just got to throw this in here, is that politics just sucks. And this is, although I agree with what she said, the way this is all panning out, it just sucks. She's part of the SEC, and she's completely disagreeing with her boss. I'm cynical to the point where, like, okay, why does she want that job? What is it? You just shouldn't be airing your dirty laundry like this. They should have gotten together. This should have been completely figured out on their own. You got somebody on one side disagreeing with, the chairman. To me, that just all leaves just a sour taste in my mouth. But that's politics, really. But yeah, the way that was done, and this is the way Gary Gensler's done it the whole way, and this is what I hate about what he's doing and think it's chicken shit. Just like she said, instead of getting together and giving some guidance or doing something, you just shooting these people and saying, that's the way to do it. The rest of you be on lookout. And I'll tell you, after going through this discussion now today, I'm now leaning towards this isn't going to change anything. Really. At the beginning of the day when I started to research this, and by the last night when I started to hear about this, my thought was, oh my gosh, this is serious. This could I love to, I'm a staker. I want to stake. The potential of doing this to something called staking in DeFi, even though it's different, there's a lot of terms that we use called staking that aren't really like this, but sometimes we call it staking. So could that affect DeFi, which I'm a big player in? Not a big player. I invest in DeFi. So there's just all this rolling through my head. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be really scary. And I actually had the thought that what could happen now is, like, Coinbase could say, oh, well, we're either getting out or we're going to put a hold on US-based staking right now. And it would just go through, it would just wave through the crypto industry. So pretty much US, you couldn't stake if you're in the US, maybe say in a month or now. That's what I thought. When I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, oh my, here we are again. We're back at the same thing again about just bitching and moaning, even with internally in the SEC and between crypto and the SEC and whatever. And nothing's going to happen for years. And Gary Gensler is going to continue to shoot people like this one-on-one. I don't know what's going to take, but probably we're going to get some senators and some legislators to weigh in on all this stuff too. And ultimately that's probably until there's actually concrete legislation I don't see that this little infighting is going to change anything. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm flip-flopping back and forth. But again, I this kind of stuff, although I agree with what she said, it's just the whole thing is distasteful, the way it's all being handled.
Yeah, I think, and I think that is it. And I've done the same thing. It's just been like you have to kind of process through each part and step of all of it. And it's frustrating then the why and like and then, is it really important to understand the why? But I also, when I narrowed down my why to go after staking, because that really just blindsided me.
Me too. I didn't see this coming. I was like, whoa, this blindsided me too.
It really did. So why go after staking? And that's where I started to question and ask myself, is this laying the groundwork for CBDCs? Because what is the entry point for many people into crypto? It is staking. It's the fact that their money is sitting in their account in the bank earning 0.25% when they could be earning 15 to 20%. And that is a huge entry point for many people. So that is my question. And, there's an infinite number of possibilities as to what it could be. But that's what I've kind of narrowed it down to. Is this to eliminate the, that enticement to move into crypto versus being content with CBDCs if that's to roll out. But that was what I was before we had this conversation. And now I'm not so sure, is this going to carry over onto Coinbase? Is it going to carry over onto other platforms? I guess we'll see.
We'll see. It'll be interesting. My bet right now is absolutely it will. Now Coinbase might be, they might be in a position to like not make any moves yet, but there are going to be some littler guys that are offering staking that are like, oh shit, we better not do this in the US or whatever, and I don't know, they're all going to have to look at, how much money they're making off of US versus shutting US down and not taking that risk but still offering it internationally. For US based stakers, if this starts to happen, which I don't know, I'm kind of thinking that this will scare a lot of people, or a lot of companies to shut down their staking. Do we now, can we use VPNs? Can we, I've done it before. I've used a VPN to get into an exchange that wasn't offered in the US. Sometimes it works. It doesn't always work. But, but then, I keep thinking back to FTX situation. When I think about skirting around and going, in using a VPN or something to invest, not in the US, I think of the people in the US that did that in FTX and now see where that got them, So again, being a centrist, I'm like, I see both sides. It's like, I want to have the options to invest in where I want to invest. But on the other hand, I don't want to get burned like FTX. And maybe if there were better regulations, better legislation, if they just had something, it'd be a better situation. The other thing I wanted to just talk about a little bit, I don't know if this matters to how many people this matters to, but in my crypto academy, when I teach people, after I teach them how to invest in Bitcoin, the first thing that I do is I teach them to stake in a liquid staking protocol like Lido or Rocket Pool. I think you're frozen again, but I'm going to continue on. And what this is called liquidated. Oh, she's gone now. Hold on. Let's get. She totally went bye-bye. She'll come back. Let's see where I was. Okay, so Rocket Pool. So I have people invest in Rocket Pool. I'm invested in Rocket Pool. One of the things that the SEC says, let me get Brianna back here. Okay, boom. There, you're back. So Brianna, I'm talking about Rocket Pool, which is I'm in Rocket Pool because it's called liquidated staking. So what this is interesting, what's different about this, but could get wrapped up in all of this, is that this is done in non-custodial, so pure decentralization. So this is from my MetaMask wallet into a Rocket Pool, which is just a smart protocol, smart D app on a decentralized exchange. And I literally go into Uniswap and I swap my ETH for our ETH. And by doing that, and I'm holding our ETH in my MetaMask wallet, so I still have custody of this token, but that what Rocket Pool does is they take that ETH that I gave them, pool it up, and give it to a validator. So there's another complexity of here. Just like Coinbase and Kraken do the same thing, but now you're in a custodial situation where you actually do have to give up your assets to them, which is not a great thing. So this is why I never actually did traditional staking. I never did staking on a centralized exchange because I didn't want to give up custody to my tokens. And this is where liquid staking in Rocket Pool or Lido allows you to do that. So nobody's talking about that yet, and they shouldn't. Now, if they do, what they should say, and this may be a good thing, is this might push more people over to Rocket Pool and Lido because they're like, hey, this can't be regulated. This is decentralized. And in fact, both of those tokens have been going up because of just more talk about staking in ETH, and you've got, well, as you know, we're going through the Shanghai upgrade in Ethereum right now, which is the next major upgrade to the Ethereum network besides the merge. And this is setting up to allow everyone that staked their ETH, because even in these fractional staking pools that Coinbase and Kraken have, if you're in ETH, you couldn't withdraw it. It gets locked up until this new protocol comes through. And they're saying sometime this summer that people will now be able to withdraw their ETH from all that. It's been locked up for like 2 or 3 years, right? But it's earning interest, but they couldn't pull it out. The thought was, before all this crazy SEC stuff happened, was that as all these people start unlocking from their ETH, they're going to put it in these liquid ones, these decentralized platforms, and these tokens are going to go up. So I've been really thinking about sort of aping into a couple of these tokens just to take advantage of that possibility. Just like I'm thinking about aping in, and I actually did, by the way, again, another subject, into an AI stock. I actually aped into the graph because I was just like, I got to get into some of this AI stuff. And I haven't done Singularity yet, but I don't know. Mm-hmm. Anyways, another subject. But so that's a whole other thing that's interesting. And that really directly affects me because I'm in it. I teach my clients to get into Rocket Pool because it's so simple to do. You're literally just swapping one token for the other, which couldn't be simpler. And they're, you're only earning 4%, but it's a place to start for people. The other comment I wanted to make was, you're right. There are apparently fractional staking programs that offer 10, 20%. But I have a question about that because most of the stuff that Kraken and if you're doing ETH or Cardano or one of these larger, more well-known blockchains, 10% is the highest, usually around 4%. So there's this question, I think it's the Cosmos network, or there's another blockchain that does give you like 20% for just staking. So to me, there's something off about that. Now, I'm, coming from the DeFi world where, anywhere from 10% to 1,000%, I understand in that world why I'm getting this 1,000%. And most of the time it's an incentive. It's a very short-term incentive that they're giving me to participate in that. And it doesn't last forever. And it's one of the reasons in DeFi, you got to watch out because what is awesome one day goes away the next day. And it also has to do with the supply and demand, how many people are in a certain pool. But why would a staking protocol where you're running the validator nodes give you 20%? So I'm not sure about that. And the reason I bring that up is I'm all for transparency and disclosure because I think there's a lot of room for it in crypto. A lot of room for it. Crypto talks a really good game about being transparent because our underlying blockchains were built that way. But unfortunately, the realities of any business, of anything that does with money, things get muddy when they're actually put out there. So there are places in Ethereum, parts of the Ethereum network, that are so centralized it would scare you to death. That is, even though that the blockchain itself is a decentralized mechanism, the whole network is not decentralized. So we talk a big game. We talk a lot of, really high mighty principles about decentralization. And Bitcoin absolutely was developed that way. And for the most part, Bitcoin and Bitcoin only pretty much runs that way. Almost every other blockchain that's been created since that has parts of non-transparency and centralization built into it. Just because that's how it has to work to get people interested in it. And people, again, it's open source. And since there are no regulations necessarily, people can do whatever they want. So again, this just brings up the whole thing that it's not being done right, and we need something. I hate the way it's happening. I hate the way Gary Gensler's doing it. And there's lots of, infighting in the SEC. There's, people like Brian Armstrong who I don't believe are being truthful about some of those statements, or really getting to the point, using his agenda. Everybody's got an agenda. So, there's lots of yucky stuff in there. But I'm always going to come back, and as we're now 12 minutes after the hour, does this make me want to run away from crypto? No, not at all. Do I believe that inherently what crypto was built on and what crypto stands for is a force for good in the world? Absolutely. Now, with those statements said, and am I still investing in it? Absolutely. But it just makes me want to be more careful, go slower, and I'm already a slow go guy in this crypto stuff. I go slow, I double check, triple check. I use small amounts of money when I'm starting out. And this just makes me want to do that even more. But I'm okay with that, because I'd rather be in the game than not, and, be completely, fearful of it. So, at the end of the day, we just got to be careful. We got to be informed, why you watch shows like this, why we want to, talk about it. Because, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And we know it's in its infancy. I don't know if this quite happened when the internet was being built, but probably a lot of it was. There certainly was a lot of naysayers in the internet. Oh, the internet's a scam. It's not going to work. Well, look where we are today. So we are in the infancy of this industry. We're at the beginning. We're in the sausage making part of it, and it's ugly when you get into the nitty gritty part. But overall, that sausage tastes really good. So let's just all stay in the sausage making party, and just stay informed and move on.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. I think there's going to be a lot of volatility, and we have to expect that. We've come this far, and for me, investing I've learned so much. It's really a journey. And I like to have that responsibility. And to not be so constricted by control that we don't have the opportunity to be able to kind of learn the ropes a little bit. Because it really is. It gives you a real look at who you are as a person, really, and how you do things, right? You do anything like you do everything was something that kind of stuck with me. And I've had to learn to develop a lot of self-control and a lot of patience as well throughout this. And because of that, this year, I've started to earn some rewards, take some gains, and find where my greed line is, that not to cross the greed line. There's just so much. It's the journey that it's all about. And even these situations like this, and that's why this morning I woke up feeling like, okay, I'm going to be above this. I'm not going to get submerged into this. And now, before leading up to the talk, I was like, no, I'm going to put everything out there that I have to say, get it all out there, because it's okay to be frustrated with it, but then I'm going to lay it to rest, and I'm going to put it aside because I have other things I'm working on. I'm not going to stew in this for very long. By the time this is up, there's going to be another thing, and then we'll be focused on that. So I think where we stand, we don't have, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of power as far as what the SEC is going to do. So or what other people are saying, or whose voice is the loudest. And so I think that we just got to learn to go with the flow and keep it on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, obviously Gary Gensler doesn't really give a hoot what we think and what the people in crypto, think, because we've been saying this a long time, and he just keeps doing his thing. I really think it's going to come down to legislation, which is slow, which we know, but we do have a say in that. That's the good part. We can't really do anything about what Gary Gensler. He's not, an elected official really, and so we have to deal with that. But we can deal with our elected officials. And that's part of what we should all do in crypto. Like I said before, I really want to be apolitical, but things I really care about, that you can't get away from it, you do have to pay attention to it. And so this is something that I'm definitely want to pay attention to. But like you, I don't want to get drugged down into the negative, nasty stuff about it. And even today, you can see, it was just all over. It just surrounds that, because you can go down so many little paths and rabbit holes and different things. And but I got other things to do too, right? I want to continue to learn and to teach, the good parts of it. And it's interesting because I'm still working and writing, some of the basic stuff about blockchain. I want to teach people that don't know anything about blockchain, what blockchains are, why they're so good, why Bitcoin is good. And so I'm reading lots of different views and opinions. Pretty much we all say the same thing. Blockchain is what it is, and Satoshi created what it is. But people have different ways of saying it. And I get a little bit more nuance to it. But every time I go back to the very fundamentals of crypto and blockchain, I am reminded of why it was created and how Bitcoin, the granddaddy, and still really the how Bitcoin goes, crypto goes, is beautiful, and it totally is a force for good. And what really frustrates me as I'm going through all this is the press and the mainstream media, this kind of stuff that just now will fuel the mainstream media to continue to say things that either are not true or they just don't understand it. And then the average person who I'm trying to connect with, who doesn't really understand crypto, it's just an uphill battle. But that's why I'm writing the book. That's why I'm continuing to teach. And that's why I really want to teach everybody the fundamentals, to really dive into the fundamentals, because to me, that's what sold me. And when you really understand that, then you're like, oh my gosh, yes. And then when you have that down, when you understand the fundamentals of what blockchain is, what Bitcoin really is, and what DeFi and all the opportunities that it can arise, then you can withstand all this yucky stuff, all this crap that comes up, because this is just the reality of a new technology taking over, displacing people and jobs. This is fear, this is FUD at its maximum, right? And so you can get caught up in that and really get negative and swayed and wrapped up in that. But if you understand the fundamentals of Bitcoin and blockchain, then you can withstand this kind of crap because you know what it really can do. And it's just growing pains as we get through it. So that's, I'll end on that today. But
well said. Yep. And through all of this, Bitcoin is not affected. It's still doing its thing, and it's not going to be touched by any of this stuff. So
nope.
Yeah.
Bitcoin doesn't care about Gary Gensler or any of them peeps. All right. Well, okay, good. I actually feel much better now than I did when we started, just kind of getting it out. I don't know, people, do you feel better? Let's just get it out.
Yeah, I do too. I set that intention before going into this. So
well, good. It worked on me. It helped me.
It worked. So
it's good.
Thanks
everybody. All right, people.
We'll see you
next week. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you next week. Yeah. And keep on keeping on. We haven't heard the last of this, but like we said, we're just going to stay positive as much as we can. So we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.